Hi folks, Lawrence Mann, and I'm here today at the Tetley in Leeds, which is an art gallery, and they're showing a debate. So I was very much interested, I don't know anything about this at all, but I'm very much interested just at the title, which is Digital Art Debate. I have no idea what's going on. I don't even know who's really presenting this. All I know is the title, so I thought I'd come along, check this out, and report back to you about what's going on, what they think. For all I know, this is a bunch of traditional artists talking about digital art, which would be pretty cringeworthy. Apparently this debate happened last year, but I can't find out any information about that. This is a total misnomer. So yeah, let's go in, listen to the debate, find out exactly what's going to happen. Turns out you cannot ask questions at this debate either, which just sounds totally mind-blowing. You had to ask all questions ahead of time. But yeah, didn't find out in time, so not going to be able to ask any questions. This sounds like a bit of a riot. Let's go in, find out all about it.
Unlike my fellow panelists, I have zero background in the arts. This much bigger background in the arts. My career was in financial journalism, which someone cleverly said to me, "Oh, that's the arts, that's the dark arts." So I'm a practitioner of the dark arts, but at least I used to be. Many people ask me, why did I set up the Lumen Prize? And the answer is, I could.
Skip to the end.
This is a still from an animated film by a Greek artist, Katerina Athanasopoulos, called Attendees. The emotional impact of this film, which is about migration and the desolation of the economic downturn in Greece, is stunning. I really recommend you, this is a little commercial, to go onto the Lumen site, go onto the 2014 gallery and watch this film. I guarantee it's going to really move you. The impact is very powerful. And it's, I'm sure, no surprise to you to learn that since winning this award, she's gone on to make films for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Wellcome Trust, and has subsequently won more awards. Okay, now we're in 2014. This piece was created generatively. So that means the artist, who's a mathematician from Cambridge, trained at Cambridge and Lomas, wrote algorithms that created this piece. It's an animation, but it came out of his head in the sense that he created the storyboard for it through math. This is a really sophisticated piece. Everybody was knocked out by it. Again, 2014 Lumen Prize Gallery, please go and have a look at it. In 2014, on the basis of winning the Lumen Prize, Andy was able to quit his day job and become a full-time artist. So you can see the narrative that's coming here. Digital art is starting to take hold. I should also mention that Andy wasn't doing any shabby day job. He was doing animations for films like Avatar, or CGI for films like Avatar and things like that. So, you know, he was in the business, but now he's an artist. This is a very exciting development to those of us who've been involved in women.
One life ends. Another begins.
If you are one of us, help us.
Look at all that cheddar.
You're not in Kansas anymore.
Okay, this is the 2015 winner. This is a piece called Manet, which was featured last year at Leeds, and the artist is a duo. First time it was won by a couple, and these are already, it's fair to say Gibbs and Martelli were already recognized in the digital art world for what they were doing in digital art. This is an augmented reality piece, which means that you scan it, it's kind of a marker, and you scan it with your phone, and the video that they created comes onto your phone, and it's a really fabulous interactive piece. And it allowed Leeds to put their work all over the city, and you could scan their works and get the videos. So again, an amazing advance in what was perceived as digital art by the judges for the winning prize. Gibbs and Martelli, who weren't represented when they entered, are now represented by a major Bond Street gallery, not exactly on Bond Street, but a major gallery in the centre of London. So their careers have been pretty magnified. as well, which is fabulous. That brings me to one of my fellow speakers tonight, the winner of the 2016 Lumen Prize, Hyperplanes of Simultaneity. I will let Fabio tell his own story. I wouldn't want to cut that off, but I think you can tell by looking at it, it's virtual reality. So in the 5 years, you can see the nature of art has changed with the advances of the technology and the tools that the artists are using. And we've come a long way from photo manipulation. Now I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about where we've gone with this art. The Lumen Prize from the very beginning was a prize and a tour. My idea was I'd have a little USB stick, I'd put it in my handbag, jump on a plane, and run around, That wasn't going to work because, as you saw, the works became very complex. From the very first show, where 38 images were still images, I could run around with that USB stick. But by year 2, we were installing, there was experiences, there was location-based works, and all kinds of complications. So we looked for venues that were interested in us. God bless the Onassis Cultural Center, which put 3,000 feet at our disposal. Hired a creator, built this environment, and then took these amazing pictures. This was 2014, and we took over the whole lower floor of this building in Athens, and it was a stunning show. The pictures are still on Instagram. This is what money can do for digital art, and there's lots more of these pictures if you have a little quick look on the website to our Athens show. I'm sad to say, well, I have to be truthful, it never happened again. Museums did not line up to give us 3,000 square feet. We were really lucky with that. The curator was subsequently not sacked because of this, but the economic downturn in Greece meant that the whole program had to be stopped. And all kinds of issues came out with institutions, and we realized that our institutional strand that I was so ready to embrace wasn't going to happen. So where did we go? Okay, so this is the basement of Canary Wharf, where Crossrail is being built. And these are the kinds of locations that we've gone to. I would also imagine another slide we could have put in was a really lovely picture of Caffè Castle, a 700-year-old iconic building where they gave us the Great Hall. Delighted to have us. We've been really all over the world. We've been in redundant spaces in shopping malls. We've been in the crypt of a 16th century church in London, St. Pancras Church. We love now going to all kinds of spaces and showing digital art in heritage spaces, transition meantime spaces, which is where Phil has put the Lumen Prize. And what we've learned is artist-led regeneration is a thing. It's a thing. So basically, cities want artists, and I'm sure other speakers are going to talk about this too, and Phil and I talked about this. Cities and festivals want artists to create spaces, to create places where people can go and experience art. Not just look at it, not just admire it, but experience it and feel. And this is where we're going with Lumen. I put this slide in because artists have to eat. And it's important to know about the digital art world from our experience in the 5 years since we've started as to how they're eating and how they're making their money. Since we launched in 2012, up have come galleries that specialize in digital art, authenticators that will put a digital Bitcoin stamp on your work to make sure that it's authentic out there. People that sell digital work, like Sedition, launched the same month we did. Digital canvases, which are giving us an income, small, but hopefully important income stream. Digital canvases, sort of the Spotify of digital art, so it's a frame. You buy a frame and then you purchase different channels. And that's starting to become a business for hotel lobbies and private homes and so on. It's a way to collect art. So it's happening. There is a business starting to grow up. I can't say we're making any money at all, but we're here, and that's really good to still be here after that. So hopefully next year we want to break even. This is a picture of John McCormack, who's one of our still image award last year. on the mural platform, and his work is, he's our current artist on the mural platform. Pleased to say we're paying him. Like I said, it's not a lot of money, but it's important revenue. And this is a piece, Dream Homes Property Consultant. This is a website. This was the Founders Award in 2014. This is a website for 7 years to create based on the stories of Palestinians who were displaced in 1948 using the rubric of an estate agent website. This was bought by the Contemporary Art Museum of Denmark for 10,000 euros. So people are paying, people are collecting, and this is a very exciting development for artists. Okay. I might do one more. Yes, this is slightly out of order, but that's okay. I'm going to come back to this slide. Okay, I just wanted to make the point. This was from Leeds last year. You love this picture. My notes to myself about this slide are love. When we returned this piece to the artist, it had lipstick on it. Someone kissed it. And I mean, to me, that kind of sums it up. If you can start to love work, it will start to sell, and it makes me excited for the future for digital art. I want to go back to this. One more New Yorker cartoon. I promise this is the last one. So this I clicked out and I had it on my board. It's from 2013. And I'm going to make the point that I think I'm going to read you the caption just in case you can't see it. I think it's very dated now, this cartoon. It shows the child with an audio guide, and the mother is saying, "It's an audio guide, sweetheart, not a remote." Now, I think that was funny in 2013, but I don't think it's particularly funny now, because any kid that goes into a museum will know that pictures can move, pictures can do all kinds of things, art can move, you can put VR sets on. I think the younger generation get this so well, and I don't think they would ever expect a picture to start moving. I think they know the difference. And I think that that kid in the picture, the children who goes to the museum, will be the consumers of digital art as this genre grows. Art today, as it was in the Kipling time, can be everywhere, and it's not limited to pictures on the wall. For me, digital art has to have the same result as any kind of fine art. It has to have impact, it has to have emotional resonance with the viewer, it has to connect. And without that, it's never going to work. And I would say if you look at this piece, which is a picture from our Canary Wharf show, it connects really well, and it goes on walls, and it can be location-based and place-based. I feel very privileged to be able to work in digital art. I'm going to make two last points before I hand over to the next speaker. But I wanted to tell you about the personnel at Lumen, because I think it also tells a story. When I started at Lumen, I got an art grad, very bright, very capable. She loved art, she didn't really care about digital. She's teaching English in Spain now, that's great. The two people I have working for me now, one of whom is in the audience, Assistant Director Charlotte Lee, has a BA in History of Art from Edinburgh and a Master's in Art Market Appraisal with a speciality in digital art, and her thesis is on the web. And she, sadly for me, is going to a full-time job with Sotheby's in 2 weeks' time. But it says something, doesn't it? The Sotheby's has the wood, pick up some of my Charlotte. And the one member of the Lumen team who's over at the show, who I hope you meet, Jack Addis, told I was right here, you're not going to miss him. Jack has a master's in digital art from Camberwell, which is part of the University of Arts London, which is a program I've been working with from the start. I filled out a referee for Jack this week from the Tate. Also, I mean, a great problem really for digital art, and that is fantastic. I'm going to end with a very quick commercial. Our call for entries is open. If you are a digital artist, please enter. You can't win if you don't enter. And we have a category, still image, VR, AR, interactive, moving image, 2D sculpture, and web-based, plus a student prize which is free. So if you know any students in this space, please enter. The prize fund is 10.5K. Wonderful people like God's are among the jury panel. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.
I can give you a very brief potted history of digital art, based largely upon the V&A's collections. So forgive me if I kind of talk so much about museums' collections and ignore a lot of other things along the way, but it's just a convenient way of getting through some of this territory quite quickly. I'm actually a curator in one of the museum's departments. It's called the Word and Image Department. It includes the prints, drawings, paintings, books, manuscripts, photographs, but it also includes the museum's digital art collection. In fact, the very first computer-generated artworks that we acquired were acquired in 1969. So we were ahead of that particular curve by quite a long way. I have to say, though, that we didn't collect very much else for quite a long time. But we did actually get some works in the museum in the 1960s. I'm going to start in that kind of analog to digital era in the early 60s, when a number of artists were actually experimenting with using machines of one sort or another to create their artworks. And in this case, on the left there is a work by an American artist called Ben Leposky, who used to photograph high resolution, he used to photograph oscilloscope screens and sometimes apply colour filters, as he did in this case. On the right is a work by a British artist called Desmond Paul Henry, who actually was born in Huddersfield, not very far from here, and he went on to become a philosopher at Manchester University. But he'd been in national service, and one of the things he was familiar with was an analogue computer system. Actually, it used to be used on the front of Lancaster bombers to drop bombs on people. And he modified it to take an artist's pen and created a drawing machine that produced works like this. We have a number of works by him in the museum. In the mid-60s, though, things changed. People started to use things that we would recognise now as computers. And the very first computer-generated images to be exhibited as artworks were actually exhibited in 1965. So that's more than 50 years ago. They were exhibited in Germany, in Stuttgart, and in New York, in the Howard Wise Gallery. The two German artists were Georg Nies and Frieda Narker. Nies was actually the first of the two to exhibit his works. He was doing a PhD with a philosopher called Max Spencer, who was interested in a topic called information aesthetics. There's slightly later work by him in our collection, but Nies and Narker were really computer scientists, programmers, but with an aesthetic sort of understanding as well. Similarly, in the US, Michael Knoll was also a computer programmer. He worked for Bell Labs, a major research body in New Jersey, and a number of people there were trying to work out what they could do with this new technology. They rapidly moved on from words to try to create images with it as well. Interestingly, they often tried to emulate traditional artworks. So the work by Narker there, for instance, is inspired by the work of Paul Klee, and the work of Michael Knoll is trying to interpret Mondrian painting. This is another rather beautiful work by Frieda Narker. It's one of a set of 4 that's in the V&A collection. Again, created in 1966, using a device called a drawing machine, a plotter device with a pen on it. In this case, coloured pens. This is one of a set of 4. The first one just has 1 square in it, and it gradually builds up like this. These were actually purchased by the V&A with the help of the Art Fund. That's a major sort of thing, the Art Fund funding the history of digital. Moving on a little, there were a number of landmark exhibitions that took place in the late 60s in various places. One of them was an exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art in New York called The Machine. That's the rather beautiful cover of the exhibition catalogue there. One of the people in that exhibition was a guy called Ken Knowlton. We have lots of his work as well in the V&A. And he also worked for Bell Labs. So MoMA was onto it in the 60s as well. The ICA had a very influential exhibition called Cybernetics Serendipity in 1968. So we're just coming up to the 50th anniversary of that next year. And there was an organisation called the Computer Arts Society, CAS, that was established as a result of that cybernetic exhibition. Their first major event was held at the Royal College of Art in London, and they called it Event 1 in 1969. We actually have the archives of the Computer Arts Society in the V&A's collection. And we have a lot of work from Cybernetic Serendipity too. I'm currently organising a display that's due to open at the V&A next year called Chance and Control, and it's inspired by that Cybernetic Serendipity show, builds upon it, if you like. This is one of those prints, actually, that we acquired in 1969 by one of the artists who was in Cybernetic Serendipity. Again, somebody who'd been involved in the war. This is actually an anti-war statement. Some of you who are a bit older in the audience might recognise those little toy soldiers that you used to get a big packet of, advertised in boys' comics in the 60s and 70s. He actually reused that motif and also generated a list of soldiers who were killed or injured or awarded a medal in this random war that he programmed into his computer. A Japanese group called CTG, Computer Technique Group, was also in that show, and this is one of the works that they did. It's, not sure if you can see very well on this screen, but it's a man running, transforming into a Coca-Cola bottle and then into a map of Africa. There's a kind of political subtext to that as well, I'm sure, about the US imperialism in other parts of the world. I mentioned the Computer Arts Society. This is an early issue of their journal called Page. It was actually edited by a very well-known artist called Gustav Metzger, who died just quite recently. He was, among other things, the inventor of this concept of auto-destructive art. But in the early years, at least, he was very interested in computer technology. He moved on, but at the time he was very heavily involved in it. It was only really in the late 60s, though, that established artists who worked in traditional media started to have access to the kind of mainframe computers, the software that we take for granted nowadays. Two of the best known of them are Vera Molnar, who was born in Hungary but moved to Paris, and Manfred Mohr, German, who also moved to Paris. They're probably some of the best known artists who were working with digital technology in the late 60s. They were both interested in kind of relationships between order and chaos. Vera Molnar in particular, a lot of her work, a bit like that Frida Narka work I showed earlier on, shows things moving from order to a state of disorder. Manfred Mohr, by contrast, was a jazz musician before he became an artist. And a lot of his work looks like notation. But he moved on, actually, to focus on the cube, deconstructing the cube. We even have the computer program that he used to create one of the artworks. That's, for those of you who don't recognise it, a set of punch cards with a Fortran program on it. So you could rerun them and recreate something like the original artwork. British-born artist who, again, was very established as a painter. Harold Cohen represented Britain in the Venice Biennale, was very successful. The V&A actually commissioned him to produce a beautiful, huge tapestry in about 1967, 68. He got invited out to America, to California, and basically never came back. He discovered computers, switched from being a traditional painter to creating works using his own computer programming. This is a very early work from him, which we have. Again, you can't really see the detail too well, but it looks like a contour map, and it's actually hand-drawn by Harold, hand-coloured by Harold. But you see the sprockets on the edges, the computer paper that he's actually drawn it on. What he's best known, though, is for a program that he started to develop in the early 70s in California, called Aaron. Aaron was his Jewish name, and he thought he was going to develop lots of programs, so he'd start with A, even A, preferably. In fact, he just continued to develop the same program for the rest of his life. On the left is what would originally have been a black and white drawing created by this Aaron program, again hand-coloured by Harold. And on the right is a much more recent work, which is much more representational. You can see real people, you can see real foliage and so on in the image. At one point he claimed that the computer actually created the art, and so at one point his artworks were even signed by Aaron. And then he thought that Aaron was getting too much credit for this. Eventually he switched back to signing them Harold Curran. Similarly, he used to have some of these big drawing machines in galleries, like the Tate actually, and people paid too much attention to the drawing machine and not enough to the art that was being created from it. So again, he stopped including actual drawing machines in his exhibitions. Also in California was an American hard-edge painter called Frederick Hammersley, who briefly experimented with using computer software too. So again, on the left is a computer printout developed using a program called Art1, and on the right is an image from the same period that he transferred to a lithograph, and looks much more vibrant, doesn't it? Actually, in the UK, the art schools in the 70s were very actively involved, or at least a few of them were, in experimenting with computer systems. The Slade School of Art in London in particular was a real centre. A guy called Malcolm Hughes, who was a member of the systems group of artists, led an experimental department at the Slade. And a number of artists went through, some of them deliberately because they knew that the Slade had access to University of London computing. So on the left is a work by Paul Brown. That's a unique plotted drawing, really beautiful work. On the right is an image showing a whole ream of printouts of images by the sculptor Darrell Viner. Viner was best known for his sculptural works, but again he experimented with producing these plotted drawings, like a number of other people did at the time. Some of you might even have seen an exhibition by him here in Leeds a few years back at the Henry Moore Institute, with very similar works to this. This is the image I started with, moving on another decade or so, by an American artist called Roman Doroshko. He has a very interesting backstory. He was originally a monk in a monastic setting in the US, and he was also a practicing artist, but he was very well connected in the New York art world. He knew a lot of abstract painters, but while he was in the monastery he was producing similar abstract work. Then he dropped that, he left the monastery, he got married, and he took up computers instead. So I like to think that he sort of switched from one set of rules, one way of working, to another. And he then wrote his own computer programs and continued with that, and is still actually doing it today. He's in his mid-80s now. This is a relatively early work from his computer programming period. You can see it's a very fine plotted drawing. Take hours to produce it. But it's a unique work. It's not a print. It's not a multiple. This is another work by him. Sorry, this doesn't display too well on the screen, but the image on the left shows you the whole artwork. It's actually set out like an illuminated manuscript, because Roman, as a monk, knew very, very much about that whole history. And that's a detail in the middle, again showing the very fine plotted drawings that he was capable of producing. And then on the right there is a detail of the text that appears on this artwork, and it's actually the ones and zeros of computer code. So the computer code is the sacred text, and the output from it is the image, the illumination, if you like. It was done in honour of Alan Turing. Roman and a number of artists like him realised that they had a bit of an image problem. They were algorithmic artists working in an environment that, as has already been mentioned, wasn't particularly recognised by the art world. So a lot of museums didn't accept it as art, dealers didn't accept it as art, people didn't necessarily want to buy it. So they were kind of operating in a bit of a vacuum, with not many people really paying much attention to them. So Roman got together with another artist called Giampietro, and together they came up with this term to describe people like them who wrote their own computer programs, used their own code, and they called themselves the algorists. So in the sort of narrow sense, there's this small group of maybe half a dozen artists who were or are the algorists. But in a broader sense, Roman himself and some of the other artists apply the same term to any artists who use algorithms in their work. So this is an example by another American artist, Mark Wilson, who again was a painter in the 60s. In his case, he used to include the tools of his trade in his paintings. So you would actually see things like protractors and drawing tools and things that would just appear there, sometimes quite subtly. And it's the same in his digital work. He often includes little hints about computing technology. So you might see something that looks a little bit like a computer chip or some sort of circuit board, or, there's all those sort of references going on there. He was producing very, very complex artworks at the time when it was still very difficult to do these things. This is an inkjet print, but before that again he was using plotters. Moving on again, in the 80s I suppose, many artists and designers were beginning to have access to computers on their own desktops. But there was again this sort of crossover period when they knew they needed to understand it, but they didn't necessarily have direct access to them. So one or two artists managed to become artists in residence in big organisations that already had big computer systems. One of them was Barbara Nesson, who's best known really, I suppose, as an illustrator, but also as a fine art practice. She did covers for Time magazine. She was very much involved with the feminist movement. She knew Gloria Steinem and people like that in the US. But she worked for Time, and she managed to get access to their computer system, working at night, producing images like this using incredibly limited technology. There was a computer program that she used. She didn't start from scratch like the people I've been showing until now, but she was able to produce very strong images like this one. In the V&A, we even have a range of books that were created with a digital aspect to them, if you like, digital artist books. This is quite a famous one by the writer William Gibson and the artist Dennis Ashburn. It's called Agrippa, the Book of the Dead. It's a slightly misleading title. Agrippa is actually the name of a Kodak photo album that you would put your family photos in. Gibson wrote a poem about his family history. But what he also did was to put the text of that poem on the floppy disk that you can see embedded in the text block of the book. I don't know if you can even recognise that as a floppy disk. Some of you are too young to know what a floppy disk probably is. But so the deal was, you bought this book, you if you cared to, took the floppy disk out of it, you put the floppy disk in your early Mac, it scrolled, the text scrolled up the screen and then it was white, you'd lost it forever. It was obviously a kind of conceptual work in some ways as well. We never actually played our copy of it, but I know other people did. What also interestingly happened with it was that it was immediately hacked, or allegedly hacked, and this was in the very early days of the internet. So somebody put the full text of the poem up online on a messaging board that people could look at. Gibson, I think, was relatively comfortable with that. And you can still go and you can find it all over the internet now. People have actually written PhDs on this book. So we're very glad to have a copy of it. Moving on again, we do have quite a range of born digital works in the V&A's collection. One of them is this one by Ernest Edmonds, who actually been using computer systems since the late 1960s. This is an interactive piece called Shaping Form. I don't know if you can see at the very bottom of the screen, you might not be able to make it out there. There's actually a tiny camera embedded in a monitor. And this is a bespoke monitor frame. The white bits of perspex sort of frame around the screen. And the artwork responds to its environment very subtly over time. And it changes. And it's a rather beautiful piece. It's a very minimal piece as well. It is rather beautiful. So I have quite a few works by Ernest. He had an exhibition a while ago at the Side Gallery in Sheffield. The V&A did a couple of major shows in the late 2000s. One of them I curated called Digital Pioneers, but it was deliberately timed with another show called Decode, which is a contemporary show. So we were trying to show a bit of the history alongside current practice. This was one of the works that was in the Decode show. That's a very, very large projection in a big space in the museum against the wall by an artist called Daniel Brown. It's called On Growth and Form, and it's a reference back really to Darcy Thompson, who published a book of that title, and quite a few digital artists were inspired by him. Daniel, incidentally, is also the son of Paul Brown, so they're possibly one of the first digital art dynasties. It's like Florence in the 15th century, it's kind of passing on some of the skills from one generation to the next. We also have work that uses processing, which I guess many of you in this audience might well be familiar with, including this one by Casey Rees, who's one of the founders of the movement. This is a still image, but the work itself evolves over time indefinitely. It starts off with a blank screen, draws a line, draws another line, and gradually it evolves. Casey, interestingly, uses text to describe his work before he then goes on to actually create it. And lastly, I wanted to finish with this one, which Carla's mentioned already. It's by Andy Lomas. This is a set of 4 still images from cellular forms, but we actually acquired quite a wide range of his work, including some videos that were created using his own bespoke software. And again, you have to see these things in detail to appreciate them. They're incredibly beautifully made, very, very fine pieces. And I'm going to finish there. Before I do that, I'll just say that all of the works in our collection are available, listed on the V&A's website. We have a collections database, so you can search by artists. You can type in a few words and get a few examples back. So you can type in computer art, for instance, to get early works back. You can type in plotted drawing and you'll get some of those unique drawings that are shown. So that's really just to give you a very quick flavour of what we've got. Thank you.
I'm a theorist of digital art. It works. Okay. That's because I always, it's 15 years that I work with in the fine art world, and even if I work with technology sometimes, it was since winning the Lumen Prize last year that I stepped in the in the digital art world. So for me, like in Italy, it's like a niche digital art. So it was just after winning the prize that we were like some curators that came and connected to me and started a new life with in this world. So now they are my first steps. These are my first steps in digital art world. Oh wow! The tourist. Okay. And then to go. Okay. I always painted. I'm an oil painter, and I always think that in art there are no strict rules. So we experimented a lot. And for me, I think that art is do things in different ways. So I don't, for example, use brushes. I use everything like sticks. Here I'm using a piece of plastic. I basically I invented and developed a technique, my personal technique is called subtraction of oil on canvas. I put the canvas on the oil on the canvas, and then with different things I put it off, and I make the shapes. So I don't need like a sketch before I start drawing, but I start directly with the color on the canvas. As you can see with the stick, or with this, or mostly also unconventional things like ear sticks and things like that. This technique requires a completely different approach to the blank canvas. It's more like sculpting because you are like removing the colors, searching for the shape. So it's like thinking, it's like sculpture, it's like thinking 3D, even if you work on a 2D surface. I experimented a bit during the years with sculpture itself, but I felt I wasn't going nowhere because I did things that others did. For example, this one was, in my mind, was a paradoxical world where there was only the sea were built and where are the continents, like where is Africa? I'm a tourist of the digital art. But it looks like a Death Star or a Pomodoro thing, and so I quit my sculpture career. Then, nearly 5 years ago, the nerdy side of me came out. Ta-da! And I had my childhood in the 80s, so my view of the future was very hardware with giant robots from the anime, or with domestic robots that could bring you a beer like this one. I got a huge collection, tanks, eBay, because all the toys, expensive toys that I couldn't afford when I was a child, now I got this, my studio is full of these creatures. And then I started to search a way to merge my two main passions, that was technology and art. And the idea came out when all the hardware like Arduino, Raspberry, Sensor, Gyroscope came out and were widely available. It was like 10 years ago, before the selfie mania and before everybody's got a smartphone. I was working on Vertigo, that is a series of paintings of huge canvases that these are some examples. No, but why? You don't know.
Any advice on this?
Because I think it's a preview, maybe. Maybe it's a preview.
It's weird because some of them
I think you just have to come and see the exhibition and then you'll see
Yeah, you have to come and see. No excuses.
Yeah, you have to come. But this is digital art. Pixel art. Yeah, but there were big canvases, like with if you can like imagine, there are cityscapes from the top with very exaggerated perspectives, and people started to play with they used to get, in my exhibition, get photos on pretending to fall inside the paintings, and so they were playing and dancing with my artworks. So then, like this one, okay, this one is okay. As you can see, there are people like getting crazy, and sometimes with creepy results. This is like, I don't know, I think it's the daughter of one of my collectors. I don't know if she threw the baby on the canvas or if you put the canvas on the ground and then you put the babies on. But the idea was clear. It was time for the spectator to have more central role in my artworks. And they have to be more interactive. So I made a series of installations using the sensors. The most significant is Attendees. Attendees is significant for two things. It was the first time I couldn't do the whole artwork by myself, but I had to use the skills of other artists, like an engineer, a musician. And the other thing is, it was the first really interactive thing. So it was like a study of how people interact with an artwork that it was like supposed to be used, not just to be seen. Attendees is basically a swing that is connected to projectors and speakers. And the visuals and the sound are synchronized to the movement, creating a personal experience depending on how people interact with it. So it was like this. This is like a space where first Attendees was displayed. Attendees is in that black box there. This is an important show in Milan, and all the other artworks are like photos or paintings, and this the only thing, it was like something new for Milan. And but people didn't realize that they can actually go on the swing. So they went inside the box, they saw this swing with the LED that was like illuminating the swing, and say, okay, and they commented, "Bravo Fabio, you made it." But it was used by, it was cool. It was cool. And anthropologically, here in Toronto, I saw that little babies, when goes on a swing, they like are afraid and stay still, and they don't know how to use the swing. While older people like bring back their childhood memories and go very fast on the swing. And this was the first project, as I said, in which I had to collaborate with other artists who had the skill to help my vision to become real. I came out from isolation of my studio and started sharing and merging ideas and abilities. And I think it's a world that every artist has to break through. Because I think that new technologies now are the dialogue, the emerging spot. Because when I speak to another painter, we talk about the brushes, which color, which technique you can, but it's almost limited. But this is something new and something very exciting to merge and to create a dialogue on. Then, 3 years ago, came out the VR, the Oculus Rift. And I was one of the first in Milan that had this toy, because I'm shy. And it was everything I was waiting for, because it was the perfect way to make someone feel like, have the illusion to be inside a painting. So I started I started this collaboration with an old friend of mine. And the technology was the excuse to work together. He is a CGI artist from Tokyo. He's Italian, but he lives in Tokyo. And he realized the digital part of the installation you can find in the docs. The installation is called Hyperplanes of Simultaneity. That is a complicated name, but it's more complicated now to see. And it's composed by two elements. It's like a show, composed by the real painting and the VR version of it. These are some, this is quite good. These are some of the paintings, the real paintings that compose Hyperplanes. And you are actually, when you put the headset on, you are like inside the painting in a spot. I think that it's very, very important, the composition in VR. For example, and the first time I displayed Hyperplanes, it was on curved canvas that were like reminding the dioramas or the old illusions in which painting was like reality, and now virtual reality is like the painting, and it's like a hug that the artwork gives to the spectator. That's why it's and even if it's like 2 years old project, I think it doesn't age with the technology, because we found a good formula that is giving surprise. You have what you see in the canvas, it's not 360, and so you can put elements to get the surprise. Imagine, for example, like having someone right behind you, or you are like you realize after a while that you are right on the corner of a skyscraper, and I think that the immersion of war and the gorgeous sense of scale you can create adds tremendously to the viewing of the work. The fact that people really play and enjoy themselves when they are at an art exhibition permits to the artist to communicate some messages that are maybe strong, maybe are catastrophic, maybe like dystopian message, warnings of the nuclear war, but people are enjoying themselves, and there's the hope that someday, in the second stage, they go at home and they think about it. These are some of the photos of people enjoying the hyperplanes. That was my girlfriend. I love her lips. And for example, this guy would never have this face staring at one of my paintings, but it's very curious about this technology. So, yeah. This is I put these photos because I try when there's the possibility to display my works with the technology in places like old buildings full of reach of the past. So the contrast of between the past and the future, it's a theme that I think that strengthens the immersion. When you are in the technology, you are in VR, in this future space, and you will be transported from a place that is completely different. Now, what I'm doing now I'm experimenting for sure all the technologies that are available for a painter or for an artist in VR. For example, Google Tilt Brush or Oculus Medium or other softwares. But I still find that they are they are good introduction for VR or for what you can do with VR, but I don't think you can do a finished artistic product. Tomorrow I will attempt to do one at the docks from 12 to 8 o'clock in the evening, and you will have the chance to try yourself the Google Tilt Brush and to see how I do things like with this medium. Okay, and my future project. My future project is hyperplanes. While I'm still developing hyperplanes, hyperplanes put my mind on the link between past and future, and so I got 3 elements for my new project. That 3 inspiration. The first inspiration was during a visit of an exhibition in Milan of a famous 18th century landscape painter that is called Panellists. It's a master from Venice, and he's a landscape master. He did in the 18th century this lot of beautiful detailed works, but he used some tricks. And the tricks were the camera obscura. He used like these big black rooms, and he stayed inside the room. There was a hole that projected the outside world inside the room and on the canvas upside down. This, I got a link in my mind with the other inspiration is Google VR, VR. That is one of the best experiences you can have in VR right now. Basically, you can be everywhere in the world, and for a photographer, I think it's something it's like a paradise. You can choose the spot, you can choose even the sun, the position of the sun, so all the shadows, so you can recreate every corner of the world. And so, and the third element that gave me inspiration for my next project, it was the meeting with this guy that is the biggest collector of old cameras that we have in Italy. And so I want to do something like recreating all the VR thing in Google Art with camera obscura and all the old methods to capture the images. And that's the diary of my little journey in the digital art world.
How do you create the value in the work, and how do you get income back from it? And you know, they were deliberately only producing half a dozen copies of an image in the same way that a printmaker might only make half a dozen copies of an image to try and invest some value in it. But in contemporary pieces, sometimes they might do it rather differently. The artwork might be the digital file, but you might also have some token that goes with the artwork that's a kind of physical representation of it that is almost like a certificate of ownership of it. Casey Reese, for example, we acquired this unique artwork by him, which is essentially just one computer file. But in addition to that, we got the documentation that goes with it. We got, sounds very retro now, we got a CD with the content of the file on it. And the CD was sort of stitched into a piece of paper. And it was, you know, really quite physical artwork in its own right that operated independently of the physical, of the data, the file that he also supplied us. But it got more interesting. Very soon after we acquired the work, we were immediately asked to lend it to another museum for display. And as I say, the actual artwork was just this digital file. And of course, Casey Reese, the artist, had a backup copy of it anyway. So what actually happened was that he just FTP'd the file to the museum that wanted to show it, and we got our name on the label as being lent, you know, courtesy of the V&A. But, you know, the whole way in which things operate is very different, and I'm not sure it's going to be that straightforward for the kinds of works that are going to be created in the future to, you know, stamp them in a way that makes them secure from other people hacking into them and trying to rip them off somehow.
I should just add, the Contemporary Art Museum of Denmark that bought this website was very happy with a similar kind of documentation, paper documentation that Doug is talking about. We printed it out and so on, and they own that website. So, I don't know.
One last question, or shall we call that a day? Anyone? Yes, actually, we did have some sent in by over Twitter, so if that's okay. No. What's that? Okay. That was it? You have a question?
Come on, Emma. Come on. Just, you ask your question.
So it's like, with the rise with VR headsets and like more applications being developed for those types of devices, do you think that's sort of going to make the public, like the people who are coming to see this exhibition, take digital art more seriously as a medium, or do you think it's going to hinder it?
Does VR help with the acceptance of art in the art world? Is that right? You would have no.
I think that with the market of if the VR, for now it's a very little market, even if there is PlayStation VR that is selling very well and all the mobile things, but people are not using it because it lacks content until now. But I think that one thing, I don't think that people will take digital art made with headsets more seriously. I think that there will be. It's difficult for me when I did my project with virtual reality. I was afraid to step into the field of the video games. It's a field in which I can compete in research and technology. So you have to find something that is very artistic in what I'm saying and what I do with virtual reality. So I think it's like a competition between consumer virtual reality for the video games or for the movies or for everything, and using VR headset to do something that is, I use like very photographic, very figurative things. So I think there's a little, you have to make a little differentiation, and that's it. But I don't think it's about taking it more seriously or less seriously. And that's it.
I was going to say that it sort of creates another bridge between art and games, which has got to be a good thing, I would think, in the same spirit that connecting art with music is good, you know, in that it broadens the viewer base or the listener base or whatever, but for both. So it can only be a good thing, I would have thought.
We show the Lumen Prize in non-art venues, for example, Cafelli Castle, and we would have people come in and say, oh, no, I don't go to art galleries, and then we couldn't get them out. And it was largely because of these kind of what I would call bridge technologies. Their children were familiar with this idea, the kids wanted to try it, and then the parents couldn't get out. So it was interesting to see that, because it was mostly the younger ones that were really reacting to the VR pieces at Cafelli. Older people enjoyed, you know, all age groups enjoyed it, but the kids just couldn't get it off them. So I see it as enlarging audiences for art and engaging new audiences for art. So I would agree with both of you.
Well, I think that has been a fascinating evening. I hope you all join me in thanking our panel and give them a big round of applause.
Okay, so I said that was going to be good or that was going to be crap. Guess what? Crap. Yeah, so who was it? It was a curator of the museum, it was the V&A, it was a couple other people as well. It was an artist, I'll do that, a digital artist. I shouldn't be mean about these people. They're probably, you know, I'm sure they're good people, I'm sure they're experts in their fields, but do I call it digital art? No. I'm sure in a sense it's digital art. I've had this discussion in the comments on my videos before. What is digital art? Who is an artist? It turns out it's a massively broad field, isn't it? And I just get so irate about this. But in that section on the history of digital art, where was digital painting? This massive field of digital painting, of which I am a part of, completely left out, non-existent. And yeah, that made me feel a bit upset to just be so devalued like that. This was basically the art world talking about digital art from their perspective, and these are the people who won't let people like me, people like you, artists, illustrators, digital artists, digital illustrators into their galleries. So really, you know, the digital art debate wasn't a debate because it was very, very one-sided. And yeah, I mean, that was enjoyable from a certain perspective, but it certainly wasn't a debate. So yeah, let me know in the comments below what you think about that. I'd love to know very much what you think about this. Right now, I'm being shown the screen. So, by my cameraman Harry, who I'll introduce you to in a moment, who's trying to point out who is behind me. Let's take a look. It's the organisers of the event, yeah. So I'm basically bad-mouthing their event here, and they're behind me. I'm not that shy, so it doesn't really matter. We could go over and talk to them. I won't. But yeah, so like I say, I don't call that a debate in any way. I was disappointed with that, but we knew going in that it was either going to be really, really good or really, really bad. I don't think it was as bad as it could have been, but it's certainly, as myself, a digital artist, a digital painter, an illustrator, you know, and I'm pretty well known, at least I like to think so. I don't consider myself happy with that as a coverage of a debate. So again, let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'd like to see if we can have our side of the debate here on YouTube. So I said I'd introduce you to Harry. This is Harry. Harry's been helping me film tonight because, well, believe it or not, I couldn't stomach filming all of that by myself. There you go, Harry. This is Harry. He works for a TV station. Let's not. Do you want to give them any promotion? It's up to you.
They're a TV station in Leeds called Made in Something. Have a guess what else they're called?
Yeah, there you go. Well, thanks for watching. Be sure to comment, like, and even subscribe to my channel, Lawrence Can Draw. And if you really did like what you saw here, you can see more of it on my website, lawrenceman.co.uk. I'll see you next time.